exploring how we can master ourselves by looking at how authors and experts say it is possible, with your host, Shashiti Basu. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 81 of How to Be with me, Shashiti, as your timid presenter, guiding you through life's tricky topics and skills by reading through the best books out there. They say eating a healthy, balanced diet is an important part of maintaining good health and can help you feel your best. Your body will want to keep eating until its nutritional needs have been met. When you continually eat food of low quality, the brain will register a nutrition deficit and signal us to eat more. However, you are not alone if you are overwhelmed by conflicting nutritional information about what comprises a healthy diet. So how do we know what to eat? Here are executive businesswoman, speaker and certified wellness coach Yanira Puy, Shahada Karim, an ayurvedic nutritionist and movement therapist, and Hortense Julienne, owner of Miss Nang Trees, on their thoughts.
Did you know that you could be absorbing anywhere from 10 to 90% of the nutrients? This is one reason why it's important to know what you're eating. There are 3 types of micronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. They're all important to give you the energy and well-being that you need, but choosing the right ones can have a positive or negative impact on your health. When deciding what to eat, always choose real food: legumes, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and lean protein. Reduce sugar and high processed food, and always drink water and include good fats in your diet. This food should be part of everybody's diet. However, we're all different. That's what is called bioindividuality. Some food might be good for you, but it might not be so good for me. In order to find out what are the best foods for you, it's important that you listen to your body.
It's extremely important to know what you're eating, but it's also important to know how certain foods affect your body. While it's a good idea in general to avoid overly processed foods, it's also beneficial to know how you respond to traditionally healthy foods. Fruits and vegetables that are high in fiber may take more time to digest. Nuts can be deceptively dense, and too many can cause bloating and gas. Get familiar with the produce section of your local grocery store and try things that you might not normally be attracted to. If you're not sure how to prepare certain things, a simple web search can help. Take it slow and take the time to notice how your nutritional choices affect you. Understanding food in both the general and individual sense can empower you to make choices that help you truly thrive from the inside out.
I believe that it is important to know what we're eating because of the deposit that everything that we eat lives in our bodies. If we are eating the wrong quality of food, the wrong type of food, the deposit that is left in our body eventually form an illness. So it is up to us to choose carefully what we're eating. Therefore, reading labels are very important. Nowadays, we are required by law to put proper labeling in everything that is available in commerce. So therefore, read your labels and know exactly what you're eating. If you can't pronounce more than 2 of them, better not have it. If you can create your own food, do it. It's much cheaper anyway.
Our first book is from Tim Spector, who is a professor of genetic epidemiology at King's College London and an honorary consultant physician at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital in London. He was a multi-award-winning expert in personalised medicine and the gut microbiome. He is also the author of 5 books, including the bestsellers Spoon-Fed and The Diet Myth. He appears regularly on TV, radio, and podcasts around the world, and is one of the top 100 most cited scientists in the world. He is the co-founder of the personalized nutrition company Zoe, and leads the world's biggest citizen science health project, the Zoe Health Study. He was awarded an OBE in 2020 for his work fighting COVID-19. We're talking about his latest book, Food for Life, The New Science of Eating Well. I was honoured to speak to him. Hence, here is a snippet of our chat. But find the full interview on www.howtobe247.com or on the YouTube channel.
I think that food choices we make are the most important things we can do for our own health. And people have not realized this at all. They've always thought it was other factors, but there's no doubt now that the majority of Western diseases could be prevented by about 80% if we had the optimum diet. And there's no other drug that can do that. So health is the number one reason. And the second reason is if we're interested in reducing climate change, it's also the single most important thing that we as individuals, rather than groups, can do, is to alter our diet habits and affect the world that way. Not only food companies, labels, supermarkets, advertising on TV. There's this billion-dollar industry, the weight loss industry, that is predominantly based around the calorie myth. And it seems to, for many people, they think, well, there's no alternative. It's the only way, given the predominance of the sort of calorie agenda, that calories in equals calories out, eat less, move more, all these things that we've been taught for the last 30 odd years. And basically all of them have been shown scientifically to be unworkable for the vast majority of people. But the myth continues because commercially it makes sense. It is complicated. And at some point we have to stop trying to oversimplify it to ridiculous levels, which is why we got into this calories mess. It's why we got into the all fats are bad mess. It's why all sugars, and why we're sort of going through this protein craze at the moment, is this rather facile view that we have to be so reductionist to sell the story to an 8-year-old. And that means that we're using old-fashioned science. We're not using any of the things that we've learned in the last 10 years. And it's also a tool by which manufacturers can hide behind. They hide behind these low-calorie, low-fat labels and don't have to say anything about the quality of the food that we're eating. They don't say anything about the dozens of extra chemicals that are in this ultra-processed food, which is really behind this whole thing. Nobody really goes on calorie-controlled diets who's on a whole veg diet and starts choosing pears above bananas or whatever. It's generally they do this from prepackaged goods, ready meals, the stuff you buy in takeaways, restaurants, and snacks, and ready-made breakfast cereals. This is now 57% of what the British public consume in calories, probably over 70% in children. So that's the main problem. It's the way that ultra-processed food with its low-calorie, low-fat labels has infiltrated our lives. And it does this in more so in our country than any other country in Europe, and only the US beats us on a global basis. So it's really a tragedy at a national and growingly global scale that we're not recognizing, because politically it's difficult to say, people don't want to be the one to say we're a nanny state, we can't have this stuff. But we know it's making us sick. We're very high on health and safety in some areas, like if there's some cheap toy imported from China that breaks apart and sticks in a kid's mouth, that one kid dies, we ban those toys and immediately, and there's an outcry. But when millions of people die from eating these foods, we continue to sell them as a cheap alternative, and we don't ban them or try and make them more expensive than the healthier versions. So, we have a strange culture that has basically ignored this problem, and we don't really seem to have an infrastructure to sort it out. Ultra-processed foods, or UPFs, are basically foods that are the majority of what we eat, and they are foods created in factories by global food companies from extracts of other foods. So they're basically putting things together that were originally like a plant, but they've stripped all the outside bits or the nutritious bits. They take the starch or the other carbohydrates or the protein from it, and they stick them together with high pressure, high temperatures, and they glue them together with chemicals called emulsifiers, and they then make them look like real foods again. And this is how your breakfast cereal resembles something that should be edible. Obviously the Rice Krispies aren't actually rice, and the cornflakes don't look like the corn you get off corn on the cob, but they are sold to us as if they are the same, and they have the same nutrients. And then, of course, because they contain nothing, they need nutrients added back in, which is often in a very cheap, unavailable form to us. So not only are they not nutritious, they don't have fiber, but they also are lacking in any goodness for our gut microbes. And studies have now shown in the last couple of years that eating the equivalent homemade or ultra-processed meal that looks identical and tastes pretty similar, you are more likely to, on average, overeat by about 10 or 15% every day. That's why they are making us fat, is because they don't satisfy us enough and we go back and eat them more, which is why the manufacturers love them, because we buy more of those products. And we've all got our own weaknesses, and we know which ones work for us, because they're made by brilliant chemists in laboratories who are doing a fantastic job picking what combination of stimulants work well in our brain, even if they don't occur in nature. But they now know what lights up our reward centers in our brain. Well, we should certainly eat the rainbow rather than just eating the rainbow of packet colors, which is very easy to do. So eating the rainbow of natural foods means that we've had this saying for a while, and yes, most people know eat more fruit and veg. We haven't really known why until recently, and it's because the more brightly coloured plants are, generally they have more of these defence chemicals in them that come under the general name of polyphenols. And people will hear more and more about this word. They used to be called antioxidants, but there are thousands of these different chemicals, and they're essentially rocket fuel for our gut microbes. So they are a source of energy and nutrition for our gut microbes, and our body themselves can't use it, but our microbes convert them into really healthy chemicals for the rest of our body. And they're often associated with bitter tastes as well as these very bright reds and blues and purple colors. It turns out that each time you have a slightly different rainbow or a different color, you've got a different set of chemicals in there. And that diversity of chemicals is another reason that I tell people to eat a diversity of plants, because that means that you're giving different chemical fertilizers to help produce lots of different gut microbes. And I think this new concept of how we need to look at food, not from calories and fats, but from realizing they're made of thousands of chemicals, that you want to be the right chemicals to feed your gut microbes, who in turn produce the chemicals that help your body, help your immune system, reduce your appetite cravings, all these kind of intricate signaling that in evolution we've evolved to have. And evolution didn't allow us to suddenly have these artificial foods that change all those pathways that have taken millions of years to evolve, and bypassing many of these other factors, which is why we overeat. So eating the rainbow, really important, but also realizing that other plants have polyphenols as well. And, olive oil is a great example. In the past, people said it was bad because it had lots of fat in it, and it has, even lots of saturated fat in it. But every nutrition expert will tell you that is a very healthy food, and it's healthy because it has lots of polyphenols in it. So, the book is all about trying to dig into food so people understand themselves what are the good and the bad bits in it, and they don't just take the top line idea. They understand what it is they're eating and why. And if people understand some of these messages, they're much more likely, I think, to follow them sustainably, rather than just being told there's a rule out there that, says you've got to have your 5 a day, and that lumps in orange juice, with it, which is, in my opinion, probably worse than Coca-Cola for your body, with something that is really healthy. Doesn't make any distinction. So I think it's understanding that.
The book is about the science of nutrition and how to eat a healthy diet. In Food for Life, he draws on his own research and the latest scientific findings to provide a comprehensive guide to eating well. In Part 1, he explores the basics of nutrition, including the different types of nutrients and how they work in the body. Professor Spector also discusses the importance of gut health and the role of diet in preventing chronic diseases. For Professor Spector, all this new science suggests we should keep an open mind on the potential links between diet and other diseases. Food has shaped the way we have evolved over the last million years. When we started to cook our food, our digestive tracts slowly became shorter as a result of the more easily absorbed cooked foods. Our brains became larger thanks to this increased nutrient intake, with a major part dedicated to our senses, in particular those neuronal areas related to food. As omnivores, we needed a good system to distinguish edible from non-edible foods, and those that were higher risk or those that gave a bigger reward. Millions of years of evolution have told us that brightly coloured fruits have a high chance of containing a higher sugar content, rewarding us with sweetness, valuable energy, and nutrients. By using our 400 smell receptors, capturing all the thousands of different floating natural chemicals, we can distinguish around 1 trillion combination of odours. In terms of foods that are healthy, Professor Spector says foods that are good for your health are also good for your gut microbes. He recommends eating plenty of plants and a variety of them, aiming for 30 different plants per week. Select plant foods high in the defense chemicals called polyphenols and fiber. Eat fermented foods regularly and eat foods in their whole, natural form to maintain the optimal matrix and avoid ultra-processed foods. Top 5 unhealthy foods are ultra-processed foods with extra fat, sugar, and salt, as well as other preservatives and additives. Artificial sweeteners in foods or drinks, highly refined carbs. These are usually UPFs and low in fiber. Foods that produce high blood sugar and blood fat peaks after meals with a lack of natural matrix or fiber. Snacks containing a lot of sugar or low quality fats, even if they have healthy labels saying they contain protein or natural sugars. Professor Spector's top 5 tips to support your immune system includes eating fermented foods, which contain helpful probiotics, eating foods rich in a variety of prebiotic fibers such as leeks, onions, artichokes, cabbages, eating foods rich in polyphenols such as colourful blueberries, beetroot, blood oranges, and nuts and seeds. Eat foods that dampen any inflammation after meals such as green leafy vegetables. Reduce consumption of meat and non-fermented dairy to occasional meals. In terms of key factors in making better food choices, here are some things to consider. 1. Label on certificates can be misleading. 2. None of us is good at estimating risks of food choices. 3. Companies can easily produce data and papers to falsely claim their product is healthy and back it up through marketing. 4. Food fraud is rife and increasing. Much of our food is not what it seems. 5. Knowledge and seasonality can help us bypass the labels and enjoy a varied and nutritious diet. When it comes to food storage and cooking tips, frozen or canned fruits and vegetables can retain nutritional value and are good options to access out of season foods and reduce food waste. Storing, heating, and consuming food exclusively from plastics may not be a good idea. Glass, ceramics, and wood are safer. Many vegetables are better cooked lightly and avoid boiling vegetables unless it's for hearty soups. Cook at home as often as possible with whole unprocessed ingredients, including good quality extra virgin olive oil. Fermenting is a great way to preserve foods and enjoy adding flavour and probiotic benefits. Today, it is impossible to talk about food without talking about the environment and global warming. Most predictions concur that if we don't change our habits fast by 2050, the Earth will have lost most of its trees and habitable areas, and amid climate-related chaos, we will have run out of food. A 2018 UN report estimated starkly that just to limit global warming to below 2%, we need to reduce meat eating by 90% and increase consumption of protein in beans and legumes fourfold. Hence, if you want to eat and save the planet, you will need to learn more about the ethical and environmental issues around the foods you eat. So think about buy and freezing more fruits and vegetables in season. Eat a greater variety of beans and legumes that fix nitrogen. Reduce red meat consumption to once or twice per month and make it high quality, local and organic. Buy less cow's milk and fewer milk products, focusing on fermented milks and traditional cheeses. Buy more organic fruits and vegetables. Grow some vegetables and herbs in an indoor or outdoor garden. Make plants the main component of every meal and learn more recipes. Reduce food waste by buying less, more often and locally, and making soups and smoothies with leftovers. Compost food waste to enrich the soil in your garden if you have one. Importantly, Professor Spector says there has been a standardization of food, which has led to nutritional guidelines for calorie requirements that divide all adults into 2 groups, male or female, and a single group for macronutrients and vitamins. This does not take into account individual biology. We all have individual responses to different foods. No two people respond in the same way, not even identical twins. Our response to food depends on several factors, but is more influenced by our unique microbiome than our genes. Amending your diet can alter your gut bacteria and thus change your response to foods, stress, moods, as well as helping weight loss and reducing inflammation. We share virtually all of our genes with each other, and only around a quarter with our gut microbes, for which we all have a unique set. Our responses to food change with age, menopause and hormone status, stress, sleep quality, and illness, making us unique across the course of our lives as well as individually. The final 5 tips include aim for diversity in your diet, including 30 different types of plants every week. Keep a tally on the fridge door if it helps. Treat children's gut microbes and diets with care and teach them about real food. Spread the word that UPFs should be avoided and are making us all sick. Experiment with your food to better understand your body and personal nutrition profile. Think of your food choices as transactions for you and the planet's future health. The second part of the book, The Mediterranean Diet, is a detailed look at one of the healthiest diets in the world. Professor Spector explains the key principles of the Mediterranean diet and provides recipes and meal plans to help you follow it. For fruits, for example, eat a diverse range of fruit in its natural form, ideally with the skin on. He says there are no super berries, but all berries are nutritional powerhouses, providing the best value for fiber and polyphenols. Similarly, virtually all vegetables, except iceberg lettuce, are good for you. Bright colours and bitter or strong flavours indicate high polyphenol content. Diversity is key with both. With legumes, he says introduce more legumes to your daily diet, such as peanuts at breakfast, and add lentils, peas, and beans to lunch and dinner menus, and especially while you're pregnant if you're not allergic yourself, to help infants avoid allergies. This was revelatory for me. Unless you have celiac disease, choosing gluten-free products is likely to negatively impact your gut microbiome. Oats and barley contain beta-glucan and are good examples of whole grains, especially in the unrefined steel cup form, and beware of any superfood claims. Brown rice has much more fiber than white rice and a better glucose profile. Durum wheat pasta is a high-protein food with around 13% protein. Pasta can be a healthy part of our diet, especially as whole wheat or as a vehicle for plant-rich sources. Bread is a good source of fiber and protein, but can cause sugar spikes. Choose rye, whole grain, and mixed flour breads with added seeds for fiber and variety. Mushrooms are a rich source of chemicals, which play an important role in protecting human immune cells against diseases such as cancer, and should be a large part of our diets. In terms of meat, Professor Spector says there is little evidence that occasional good quality meat consumption is associated with poor health outcomes. On the other hand, cheap processed meat products are definitely bad for our health. Reducing meat intakes, especially beef and lamb, can have major impacts on global warming and on your health if replaced with diverse vegetables. Similarly with fish, unless you are pregnant or recovering from a heart attack, overhyped omega-3 is not a useful supplement. Half the fish we buy is fake, so check the origin and invest in good quality. Eating 2 portions of fish per week is not needed for health and is not sustainable for the current climate. Fish stocks will run out in most parts of the world within 20 years if we continue to fish at the current rate. Many prawns and other seafood are farmed in non-sustainable ways. Seaweed, on the other hand, is a food of the future with plenty of nutrients. Dairy is also controversial. Drinking cow's milk does not improve bone health or vitamin D status, and likely increases weight, he says. Drinking cow's milk boosts growth, but is not necessary for children with adequately diverse diets. Hence, choose organic, grass-fed and whole milk, but be aware of the environmental cost. Avoid flavoured yogurts, fromage frais, and fruit or sweetened yogurts, as they are not healthy and should not form part of children's daily diets. Whilst kefir and cultured milk products are rich sources of healthy probiotics and easy and cheap to make at home, traditional cheeses are a rich source of live microbes, protein, calcium, and vitamin D. However, all cheese has a big environmental footprint related to the large quantities of milk and water used. While plant-based milks generally don't contain as many calories, proteins and vitamins as cow's milk, they are often highly processed. Eating high-quality extra virgin olive oil or smaller quantities of butter or homemade buttermilk is a better option. Nuts are increasingly being used as vegan dairy alternatives and are a great source of protein and healthy oleic acid fats. When it comes to eggs, it is a great source of nutrient, containing over 100 types of protein and all of the essential amino acids and multivitamins. Choosing organic eggs from chickens who have plenty of access to the outdoors, they should have a clear, transparent egg white when cracked. An egg a day is not harmful for your heart or general health, and many people can handle more. Sugars are always a contentious issue. Honey produces a similar effect on the body as table sugar, but it may help tickly coughs and hay fever thanks to its active ingredients. Dark chocolate has large amounts of polyphenols and fiber and is good for your gut. Look for the high-quality dark chocolate bars with only 3 or 4 ingredients. Be aware of the many sugar aliases on food labels. No added sugar products can contain sugar alcohols or sugars by other names, which are not necessarily good for us or our gut microbes, or artificial sweeteners, which may have a negative impact on our metabolism. In terms of liquids, surprisingly, he writes there is no need to drink 8 glasses of water a day if you are not thirsty. Bottled water is no better than tap water in most high-income countries. Soft drinks contain sugars or artificial sweeteners, which are all virtually unhealthy, while coffee and green teas are fermented plant products that have real health benefits. The New Science of Eating part explores the latest research on nutrition and how it can be applied to our daily lives. Professor Spector discusses topics such as the importance of eating whole foods, the benefits of intermittent fasting, and the dangers of processed foods. With that being said, here are some of the key takeaways. The Mediterranean diet is one of the healthiest diets in the world. It is based on eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts, and moderate amounts of fish, poultry, and dairy. Eating whole foods is better for your health than eating processed foods. Whole foods are unprocessed and contain all of their natural nutrients. Processed foods have been stripped of their nutrients and often contain unhealthy additives. Intermittent fasting is a healthy way to eat. It involves alternating periods of eating and fasting. Intermittent fasting can help you lose weight, improve your health, and extend your lifespan. Processed foods are bad for your health. They are high in calories, sugar, unhealthy fats, and salt. Processed foods also contain unhealthy additives such as artificial sweeteners, colors, and flavors. Eating a healthy diet is important for your health. A healthy diet can help you maintain a healthy weight, reduce your risk of chronic diseases, and improve your overall health. Our next book is from Michael Pollan, who is a journalist and professor at UC Berkeley. He is a well-known author in the field of good sociology, science, and evolution. In Defense of Food, An Eater's Manifesto was #1 on the New York Times non-fiction bestseller list for 6 weeks. Here he is speaking to Masterclass.
In trying to figure out what should I eat and what should you eat, I realized that Food Rules offered a way, a tool, a useful tool. By food rules, I mean policies. What a policy does for you is it keeps you from having to run a complicated algorithm every time you're making a decision. So in other words, you go down the aisle of the supermarket, you pick up the food, and you read all these ingredients, and you have to sit there and think, oh, this has, high fructose corn syrup in it. I don't think I should eat this. It has maltodextrin. I don't even know what that is. And you're stuck, and it's a half hour on aisle 3. But if you have a policy, I'm not going to eat any food with more than 5 ingredients, suddenly the problem takes care of itself. So the idea of Food Rules is develop a set of policies that makes it more reasonable for you to choose foods without going through that really complicated analysis. I actually wrote a book of these rules called Food Rules. Here are some of them. Don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. Eat only foods that have been cooked by humans. Eat when you're hungry and not when you're bored. So, these food rules I didn't write. I wrote some of them. Mostly I curated them. And I went around asking people. One great rule I got from a grandmother is, the whiter the bread, the sooner you'll be dead. I thought that was a pretty blunt one. So these are memes circulating in the culture. In terms of which ones you're going to adopt, I mean, you can come up with your own, and I encourage you to send them in if you do, because I'm still collecting them. And if you come up with a good food rule that has some kind of visual possibilities, think about making a poster, a Victory Garden style poster, and send that to me too. What works for you? What do you remember? What's sticky? I mean, that whiter the bread, the sooner you'll be dead. I mean, that sticks. You'll remember that next time you're picking up a loaf of bread, and you may go more to the whole grain, hopefully, because that's ringing in your ear somewhere. So what's sticky with you? That's all.
In Defense of Food is a close examination of the rise of nutritionism in our culture and a historical account of the industrialization of food. In the past 50 years or so, a whole industry has developed around the idea of nutritionism, an approach to eating based not on food but on nutrients. This led to what we now call the Western diet, a diet made up of mainly processed foods, stripped of their original nutrients and repackaged as healthy alternative food products. For Pollan, the rise of nutritionism has also made it difficult for consumers to distinguish truly healthy foods from those that merely claim to be so. The effect of this diet on our health has been nothing less than astounding. Indeed, the industrialization of food and the Western diet are the principal reason for the large number of chronic heart diseases in the Western world. In the second half of the 20th century, the food industry and the US government shifted their focus from food to nutrients. Around 1950, a number of scientists believed that the consumption of fat and cholesterol, i.e. meat and dairy products, was responsible for the rise in heart disease. They called this the lipid hypothesis. Then in 1968, the US government set up the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs, which produced a report in 1977, The Dietary Goals for the United States, based largely on the lipid hypothesis. One goal of the committee was to advise people to reduce their consumption of meat and dairy products in order to prevent heart problems. However, the head of the committee, Senator George McGovern, happened to own many cattle ranches. Recommending that people should cut out red meat would have been damaging, both to his interests and those of the powerful food lobbyists. So the wording of the committee's recommendations was changed. Where they'd previously advised, don't eat meat and dairy products, they were instead coerced to advise people to choose meats, poultry, and fish that will reduce saturated fat intake. Such a recommendation was a much smaller threat to the food industry. And with this, the discourse of diets began to change. We started to talk about healthy eating not in terms of what foods to eat, but in terms of nutrients. Pollan says nutritionism is like a religion. We follow commands that we struggle to comprehend, and we need preacher-like nutritionists to tell us how to interpret those mysterious commands. Nutritionists translate this information for us in one way only, that the main goal of eating is to maintain physical health. This promotes an almost religious dualism of good versus bad nutrition, protein versus carbs, carbs versus fat, animal protein versus plant protein, and so on. In 1938, the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act imposed strict rules on the marketing of imitation food products. One rule was that the word imitation had to appear on the packaging of any such product. Naturally, the food industry fought this decision. At a time when adulterated food was uncommon, labeling a food product as an imitation was seen as the kiss of death. Then in 1973, the food industry used their influence to change the rules so that imitation food could be marketed without using the dreaded I word, as long as the imitation wasn't nutritionally inferior. That's how we eventually entered an era in which adulterated food products like healthy imitation pasta came to be considered food. The surprising truth about today's sophisticated food science is that the original dietary goals of 1977, which initiated it, were based not on concrete findings but on mere hypothesis. New research shows that the lipid hypothesis, which associated chronic heart diseases with saturated fat and dairy products, was in fact based on two unconvincing studies. The actual link between dietary cholesterol and CHD is a thin one indeed. The Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs were under pressure from the food industry, which stood to benefit from the publication of that advice. Following the US dietary goals meant that people would have to replace certain foods with others, so as recommended they reduced their saturated fat intake, but added processed foods to their plate. The main message, as people understood it, was eat more low-fat products. Since the 1970s, nutritionism, i.e. food science, has become the dominant approach to food. Low-fat, no-cholesterol, high-fiber labels started to pop up everywhere. Even simple foods like mayonnaise and yogurt, which previously contained just 3 ingredients, were now fortified with a list of new additives to make them more nutritious. One group of foods that could not be altered was neglected: whole foods, such as carrots, bananas, and potatoes. After all, it's far easier to stick a healthy label on a Lucky Charms cereal box than on a carrot. According to Pollen, sacrificing pleasure-based diets for a scientific dietary approach has not had any noticeable effect on our health. To make our food choices more scientific is to rob them of their cultural origins and history. In the past, our diet was something we learned through our culture and personal taste. Not to mention, the massive increase of low-fat products on the market has coincided with an astonishing increase in obesity and diabetes in America. As for the main goal of nutritionism, a reduction in heart disease, deaths from heart disease have fallen 50% since 1969, a fact that low-fat campaigns have as their motto. However, though such deaths declined significantly, hospital admissions for heart attacks did not. This suggests that the cause of the decline is not the change in our diet, but an improvement in medical care. Pollen blames our poor health on the Western diet. He says this is because the diet largely consists of processed foods, full of refined sugar and flour. Moreover, it doesn't include a sufficient amount of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. In the 1930s, for example, a dentist named Weston A. Price traveled the world searching for isolated populations that subsisted solely on a native diet. He discovered that these populations in places as distinct as the Arctic and Australia, and with equally different diets, had no need for dental care. Those people who weren't exposed to refined sugar, flour, and chemical vegetable oils didn't suffer from chronic diseases or tooth decay. As a result, the author believes we need to start thinking of food as a relationship, and health as a product of being in it. What Price concluded in 1939 is that the common factor of people in good health is a diet comprising fresh foods from animals and plants from nutrient-rich soils. In other words, the issue of diet and health is one of the relationship between food and ecology. Unfortunately, the Western diet is now largely an industrialized process. The achievements of industrial agriculture have come at a high cost. One of the most important was the dietary shift from whole foods, i.e. natural, to refined foods, which are processed. Refined food is when food production has undergone a process of chemical and biological simplification. To make food last longer, it's refined and chemically treated, or in simple terms, its nutrients are taken away. Studies show that today you'll have to eat 3 apples to get the same amount of iron provided by 1 apple in 1940. For years, scientists have known that refined carbohydrates increase the risk of developing several chronic diseases, such as diabetes and heart disease, and that whole grains reduce that risk. But at this point in our history, whole grains are not recognized as part of the Western diet, which is why we need to escape the Western diet and return to a food culture. Instead of looking for alternatives to the Western diet, the food industry has periodically created new theories that claim to find the single problem nutrient to explain the current failings of the Western diet. Pollen believes the food industry needs such theories so that it can regularly redesign and repackage processed food products. New theories benefit the health industry too, by giving license to create new treatments, drugs, and procedures to manage diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. So first of all, choose natural, simple, and unpretentious food. He says if your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize it as food, then it's probably not food. Second, stay away from products that have more than 5 ingredients. Third, if a food product makes a healthy claim, this is a clear sign that you should avoid that product. Next, eat plants, as they provide the most nutrients from the soil, but make sure the soil is good. Particularly healthy are leaves, such as arugula and spinach, whose seeds have absorbed the soil's nutrients. One of the main reasons is that plants provide us with antioxidants that detoxify dangerous chemicals. The more antioxidants you have in your diet, the more toxins, i.e. substances capable of causing disease, you'll be able to neutralize. Prioritizing plants doesn't necessarily mean cutting out meat from your diet, even though meat provides just one vitamin, B12, that can't be acquired from any other food. There's no health reason to exclude meat from one's diet. Remember, however, that although meat acquires many nutrients due to its place at the top of the food chain, this means that it also collects many toxins. Finally, it's important to have a diverse diet, and also give priority to quality over quantity, as the better the food, the less you'll need to satisfy your hunger and cook whenever you can. So to sum up, in Food for Life, Professor Spector lays out some key tips. These include: sleep well and exercise regularly. Avoid snacking and allow occasional long fasting intervals. Try to eat up to 30 plant varieties a week, including nuts, seeds, and spices. Drink only moderate amounts of ideally high polyphenol alcohol. Eat fruit and vegetables high in polyphenols and fiber. Eat less but higher quality meat and fish. Ignore calorie counts and seek out the higher nutritional quality of foods with the same calorific value. Think about origins and ingredients and how they affect your microbes. Support small food producers and local shops instead of supermarkets. Think about the environmental impact of your food choices. Eat fungi regularly. Don't use supplements unless you are ill or pregnant. Always opt for real food when you have a choice. If eating convenience foods, choose the least processed ones with the fewest ingredients. Don't follow blindly what someone else says is good for them. No one is average. Understand that food is medicine and the right diet can be as effective as many drugs. Eat something fermented every day and become an expert in fermenting. Cook for yourself whenever you can. Try to look at all food through a different lens. Experiment on yourself and try something new. In terms of the future of food, this includes locally grown seasonal fruits and vegetables will return to our kitchens. We will soon be eating meat, fish, and fungi protein grown ethically in labs. Meat and dairy replacements will continue to diversify with greater environmental awareness. Individual diet scores from new tech and AI will replace governmental guidelines and shape our food choices to suit our personal biology. It will be essential to modify UPFs so that they don't cause us harm. In Pollan's book, In Defense of Food, he says, although nutritionism's slogan is to promote health by consuming specific nutrients, it is actually the main cause of many Western diseases. However, it's possible to get away from the Western diet with just 3 simple steps. Eat real food, mostly plants, and not too much. As someone with irritable bowel syndrome, food is an incredibly important part of my life, and it has dominated it considerably. But as always, please speak to a health professional if you're making any changes. Please join in on the conversation by following @HowToBe247 on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and subscribe on the podcast, which can be found via www.howtobe247.com and on all major platforms. Please do leave a review if you found this helpful and you want to be featured. Remember to check out Patreon for exclusive, unseen bonus material from every single interview, all for a price of a coffee. And don't forget to check out the new website. Before we go, here are Kim Kulp, a registered dietitian, speaker, and gut health expert; Lisann Valentin, who is an actor, author, and intuitive coach; Patricia Kolesa, who is a registered dietitian; and Abigail Ireland, who runs a leadership and training consultancy called Understanding Performance, on their thoughts. And unlike usual, see you next week.
There are so many conflicting messages out there today, which has made nutrition more confusing than ever. It's important to know what you're eating, since food provides the nutrients we need, as well as the food for the microbes in our gut. Research is showing us how much our physical and mental health is also connected to these gut microbes. In order to eat well, we need to include more plants in our diets. That doesn't necessarily mean only plants, but by eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, we can get both the nutrients we need as well as those for our gut microbes. Diet is not one size fits all, and each person has to make the choices that are best for them. It's so important to listen to your body. Foods that work for one person may not work for another, even if they're healthy. While we eat to nourish our body and gut microbes, we also eat to nourish our soul. Eating can be for pleasure and social connections. Sometimes even cake for breakfast might be the right choice for you.
While this may be a hot take on the question of the importance of eating well, my perspective is this. look inward before looking outward. So in terms of what our body needs and wants, and discerning between the two, I always boil it down to asking oneself intuitively first, what is it that I need? So simple, basic beginnings would be, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? And listening to what you feel inside. And then when it comes to the food, what does my body need right now? And seeing what comes to mind. Are you thinking about a fruit? Are you thinking about ice cream? And why? Do I need to be nourished or do I need to be comforted? And so beginning with these questions internally, we begin to retrain the way we look at and perceive food. And for me, that's where I begin. Before starting any program, before looking for advice outside of myself, the first place I look is inside.
By now, many of us know good nutrition is a part of our overall health, but sometimes we struggle to pay attention to what and how we're truly eating throughout the day because of our daily obligations. This is understandable, but we must recognize that eating nutritious foods and having an overall balanced diet is vital in performing our everyday tasks and preventing chronic disease in the long run. Having a balanced diet starts with small behavioral changes. Start by asking yourself what goals you can stick to regularly. Some great examples are walking 10 minutes a day or adding at least one vegetable to every meal. Set goals based on your food preferences, food availability, affordability, and any pertinent medical conditions. Having a registered dietitian or nutrition professional as a support system in this process can be helpful in maintaining this goal and creating a plan that works best for you. You can find dietitians on social media platforms, or you can schedule a nutrition appointment through your insurance provider.
So our model focuses on 3 pillars that support teams and execs to be at their best on a sustainable basis. And they are psychology, physiology, and productivity. What you eat feeds into the physiology pillar. So food is so much more than just calories in. We get essential nutrients from our food, and these help our body and our brain to function in the best possible way if we make great choices. So everyone is different. There's no one size fits all when it comes to food, but there are fundamentals like upping your water intake, having more vegetables, having whole foods, and cutting processed and fried foods. And if you do that, you're 80% of the way there already. It's very simple, but it's not easy. So a really easy tip is to ensure that you're looking for a good balance of macronutrients on your plate when you're having a meal or a snack. So ask yourself if you have a combination of healthy protein, carbs, and fats on your plate. And the ratio of these will depend on your goals and even time of day. But just being conscious of this is a good start. So really tune into how your body reacts and how you feel after eating certain foods too, as that is the best way to assess if something is helping or hindering. Hope that helps.